Long Island Backstory with Chief Correspondent Gary Jacobs.
Hi, I'm Gary Jacobs. Welcome to Long Island Backstory, where we're filming at the Cablevision Studios in Hauppauge, New York. I'm not exaggerating when I say in the almost 200 shows that we've done on Long Island Backstory, this is one of the most important shows that I'm going to be doing. This show can actually have the ability to change lives of many viewers, and most importantly, help the pain of alienated children and alienated parents go through this horrible experience and act. Really, it's the only show that I'm telling you, if you listen to what you're going to hear and you get involved with my next guest, your child will not be alienated anymore. My guest today is Linda Gottlieb, a world-renowned expert in parental alienation. I used to say syndrome, but she told me they no longer use the word syndrome. In parental alienation, if you want to know what that is, well, if you don't know what it is, good for you. You don't want to know what it is. It's not something you want to know. But if you're experiencing parental alienation and you want to see a little bit more about it, you can Google it. We have other shows that we've done. So, Linda, thank you very much for coming to the show. You have a huge resume of articles and amicus briefs and books that you've authored. And I don't want to spend too much time on it, but it's not because you don't have a wealth of information. So, Linda, thanks for coming to the show.
Thank you for inviting me.
First, let's talk at the beginning. Can parental alienation be, I want to say treated, but I don't know if that's the right word, treated,
There are remedies for it, yes, and there are only 3 programs that I know of that has outcome data and shows success. One is Family Bridges, that Randy Rand and Richard Warshak are involved with. The other one was Kathleen Ray's program, Family Reflections, in Canada. Unfortunately, she had to close it down due to illness. And the third one that I know of is Turning Points for Families, which I developed and used and started publicizing just a few years ago, even though I've been doing it longer than that, when Kathleen had to close her program down. I'm sure there are some other programs out there that are very successful. I don't know of other programs that do have outcome data. Family Reflections and Family Bridges have published peer-reviewed outcome data, and as a matter of fact, Richard Warshak just came out with an updated 2018 study. His original research study had, I think, was 23 children. I think the latest one is 80 or 90. And we all have similar results. The kids reconnect almost 100%, almost, within the 4 days. And the reconnection lasts as long as there is no contact permitted with the unreformed alienating parent. But if there is contact, with the courts permit, because these are all 3 programs are court ordered. If the court does allow contact with an unreformed alienator, all 3 programs have virtual 100% relapse to alienation.
So I just want to talk about this for people who are watching, and we're going to talk about what your program entails, but it's quite intensive, and I don't know if I use the word severe. I just heard somebody talking about it last week, and the opposing counsel who didn't want it was saying, we can't go into such a draconian program. So they suggest other programs, such as 2 times a week, a therapy session 2 times a week. And in fact, the alienated person said, well, why don't we start with a dinner? And the alienating mother said, what, are you kidding me? You haven't seen your kid in 3 years. You can't do dinner. You can't do a weekend. How about we try a 2-hour supervised dinner and all these things? And the judge was sort of like, you know what? Before we try something so severe, why don't we try this? But meanwhile, this person has been in supervised therapeutic visitation at EAC for probably a year now, with the alienation not getting better, but getting worse.
Yes.
And why suggest something else when we know we have a program that does work? Is there anything you could do that's not as draconian as this attorney
first of all,
said?
it's not draconian. I call my program a therapeutic vacation, but I'm always fascinated by the fact that they say, 90 days, no contact with the alienating
And that's the most
parent.
important thing is no contact or a sequestration
with the alienating
of a minimum of 90
right.
days.
At the
And
very,
all the programs have
at the
this.
very least, it's compensatory time, which
I make that argument too.
Why didn't somebody say, gee, 4 years they didn't see a parent?
It was okay that they didn't see the person for 2,000 days, but now and no contact. All of a sudden, 90 days is draconian.
Yeah.
Right?
And let me be very clear: these parents have not been guilty of bona fide abuse and neglect. I mean, these are fit parents. It wouldn't be alienation if they were not fit, if they were abusive or neglectful. So let's be very clear about that. So it's not draconian. I call it a therapeutic vacation. It's 4 days. There in the afternoon we have activities.
Let me just start at the beginning.
Yeah.
So let's just say you get to court and you get an enlightened judge, which unfortunately is probably not going to happen on Long Island. Most of the judges suck on Long Island. I'll be honest with you. I'll say it, but I've been to other places.
You can say it.
I've been to Atlanta and I've heard I was out in Wisconsin and the judge was very strong. In fact, I was down in one in Maryland. Kids need to have a relationship with both parents, and I don't care if you can't make it happen, I'm going to make it happen. Here on Long Island, not only do they not care, they encourage the alienation
Well,
because
that's
it keeps the
not
fighting
true
going.
because I've gotten some court orders from Long Island judges.
Well, that's very few.
I
I'll say, you can be politically correct. Most of them out here don't care.
Some of the judges are in a bind. They hear that the child is terrified of that parent, and they're afraid.
Well, they're afraid. How are you going to do it? Because I heard what am I going to do? Yank the kid?
Yeah.
I've heard the judge say to the alienated person, okay, let's just say we go with what do you want me to do? Do you want me to go there with the police and yank the kids out? What do you say to the judge who says, what do? I believe that the kids are alienated. I believe they should have a relationship. But what do I do? How do I get them out of the house?
Well, that
Just
is
physically. What do I do? Do I send a sheriff?
That is a misnomer about my program. I kept track of the latest 40 children who came through TPFF, Turning Points for Families. The youngest was 5, and the oldest, there were several who were 17. Of the 40 children, and I also, 6 children from 2 families hadn't seen their alienated parent in more than 4 years.
Okay.
The average is about 2 years. No contact at all. Of the 40 children who came, 34 came under the auspices of their alienated parent. How did that happen? Indeed. Now, the only child, I think there was only one child, she was 9 years old, and I really do think that she would not have come unless the alienator came with her. I think the remaining 5 would have come, but the alienator didn't want to give up any control any sooner than they had to.
Right.
So they brought the child.
Well, so the alienator brought the child to the program.
In the six.
Well, what do they say when the alienator is going to go to court and say, Judge, I can't make them go. Am I going to tie them up? And
isn't it amazing? How do you get a child to go to school? How do you get a child to keep medical appointments? If a parent cannot get a child to do what that parent wants them to do, then they're incompetent.
But what do you say the judge says they're not going to go, Ms. Gottlieb?
On that basis, they shouldn't be they shouldn't be the residential parent. The children go because the alienator says to them they have to. Because the court
they're afraid of going to jail.
Whatever it is, or they're afraid that the 90 days will be extended because the 90 days isn't automatically lifted.
I read in your program that it said that you can change that, and I guess maybe that's, now that I'm understanding it, that's probably maybe part of your reasoning is that they know if they don't participate, it's going to get extended. So
exactly.
You're better off doing it up front, and then maybe their mind they go, well, if I do the right thing, it'll only be 90 days. If I don't, it's going to be longer.
And that is not the real reason, I believe. It's an important factor, and
so
it's
what do you think
necessary.
How do they get them to go all of a sudden?
The real reason is that these children really want a relationship with their alienated parent. They are rejecting that parent only to go along, to get along with their alienating parent. Amy Baker says your child is still in there. It's just beneath the surface. When the court imposes contact, it is like an albatross lifted off the child's neck. They don't want to choose. Amy Baker has written a pamphlet about that. I don't want to choose. They don't want to choose. So that's another counterintuitive issue in these cases. The very fact that the court imposes contact is what the child really wants, not what they're stating. So we have to understand that. So it's important
to say that again, not what they're stating, because a lot of times the judges interview the children in chambers. And then they base these decisions on their chamber discussion. But most of the time they lie because they're alienated. And then they use that, the judge uses that, well, I can't say what they said, but that sort of covers them and everything.
Right, exactly. They're going along because they know that...
Isn't that worse?
What?
Because the child is telling the judge what's not really true, not what they really believe. Now the judge is listening to them, and that's more guilt and more burden that the child's got to carry.
Why do you think these children cut themselves, threaten suicide? They're torn apart. They're torn apart. No child should ever be put in a position of having to choose one parent over the other, and that's why APSAC describes this as psychological child abuse, called terrorizing the child.
So it doesn't happen like one day, maybe sometimes it does, but a lot of times it doesn't happen that one day you wake up and all the kids don't talk to the parent. Some kids are stronger,
there are individual differences,
and I see the oldest kid tends to be alienated easier first. They take, in a boy's case, and this is again empirical, I don't have any empirical data to prove it, but that the oldest boy takes on the role as the father and therefore gets alienated easier, where the younger kids tend to maybe...
There are a lot of factors, but that does happen.
How easy is it to get a court to order it? Because listen, they're not going to volunteer. No alienator is going to all of a sudden go from, I won't even let you see the kid, to, okay, now you can have the kid for 90 days. How common is it, and how do you get the courts to order it?
It is very difficult. My colleague Steve Miller says the prior probability of the courts doing anything to change anything, the prior probability is 95% against. You really have to often have an expert witness. I mean, most of the court orders I got, and I think I've had up to 21 court orders now from, I think, 7 states around the country. Usually an expert in alienation has testified first.
That needs to be first, because I think it gets the judge off the hook, too. To say, listen, an expert told me that this is the right thing.
Yeah, that's right.
Can you be the expert, Linda, if you're going to be doing the program?
Well, that's up for debate. It's very hard. And I'm not invested in getting referrals.
I know. Well, the thing is, I personally know that you're very busy because I'm trying to get your time and send you people, and I know you turn down people who are actually not alienated. They're so I know that it's not that you're lacking the business, but I could see on the stand the lawyer saying, "Well, Ms. Gottlieb, you're saying that they need the program, but you have a financial benefit, so of course you're going to say that."
Well, if the alienated parent can afford an expert in addition to my program, I do suggest it. On the other hand, I've had some cases where I just said, listen, I did a case assessment to determine if they were appropriate for my program, like any medical provider would do that. Is the patient appropriate for this procedure?
So let's just go, so that would be the first step. If somebody wants to get they're alienated and they want to get them in, would the first step be doing, say, in order to show cause, requesting an assessment? Before they get to that, do you think that would be the first step?
I'm not sure what every state, calls it or what they do, but usually, in most of the cases, I've gotten referrals based on the fact that an expert had testified first that this is alienation, this is severe child abuse.
But what's the downside if it's not alienation?
Yeah, right. Compensatory time, big deal.
So they haven't seen the parent in 3 years. Now they get 90 days alone to get back some of that time. What is the downside? There's no downside.
Right, exactly. I mean, parents don't take kids away on vacations and trips it is kind of silly. I don't think there is a downside. And of course, I would always do an evaluation of my own once they came. But it's clear, within a few hours, I see all the 8 manifestations in that child.
So let's just talk about the beginning. So because we have about 10 minutes. But so the court orders it. They say starting January 1st, Linda Gottlieb's program is going to start. I guess they threaten, because now it's an order, so if the other parent doesn't participate, they're in contempt of court and facing jail. And obviously, if a judge was insightful enough to order this, they take it pretty seriously. So the parent shows up where with the children?
Anywhere in New York. That's where my license is. They come to New York.
So you pick, I mean, they go to your house, they go to a hotel,
No,
where do they go?
Well, depending on the child's activity desires.
Okay.
I had been working in upstate New York for a number of years, and we went to a number of local activities like rock climbing and bounce and
So the parent shows up and let's just say that the mother's the alienator and the father's the alienated, just to keep it easy. But we both know what happens both ways. My disclaimer, it definitely happened, and you've done both. So the mother shows up with the child. Is the father there?
No, the alienating parent does not participate.
Okay, so the kids don't. How do the kids get to?
Well, like I
wherever you're
say,
going?
34 out of 40 came with their alienated parent. They got on
The
planes.
alienated parent shows up to the house, and the kids just come out.
Shows up to my the judge. Sometimes they've done transitions in the lawyer's office and in other places. Yes, they did it. 34 out of 40, and I'm not surprised.
So they show up with the father, who they haven't spoken to in 3 years,
right?
Or the mother, but the father.
Listen,
they show up to the place, and you say what?
Listen, sometimes people are away in the military, like you said. They haven't seen their child for 2 years. The other parent says, "That's your daddy, that's your mommy."
No, there was a step I left out, that you make them write the alienating.
Right,
the alienator has to write a letter to the children
Right.
first. Talk about that and the importance of it.
Well, and that letter is to test the genuineness for the reunification of the alienating parent. They have to write a letter saying, "I support the reunification, and this is why. These are the qualities your other parent has to offer you, and this is why you need your other parent meaningfully in your life." And unfortunately, most alienators were not able to write that letter.
Really?
Now, don't forget, these are severe cases.
So, but you'll still go forward if they don't
Yeah, the
participate.
letter
That just
is.
tells you.
I don't need the letter for the reunification.
Oh, interesting.
I need it to test the resolve of the alienating
Very
parent,
interesting.
because
I guess it's easy
at
way
the
right
end
there.
of 90 days, I have to make a recommendation to the court. Do we need to extend this? But I would also use that letter to shorten the period, because the length of the no contact period is in the hands of the alienator. If they have an epiphany and are really genuinely supportive of the reunification, I'd be very happy to have that contact after 30 days.
Right.
Unfortunately, that doesn't happen.
Otherwise, you wouldn't have probably been to you. So now they show up at an activity. You know, let's say here on Long Island, you go to an activity. You're there. You
No, the activity is in the afternoon.
With just the parent? Without you?
The child and the alienated parent come to my office. The morning we do talking.
Okay.
And then in the afternoon we have an activity that the child is interested in. And it puts the parent in the role of that parent again. So in family therapy, we just don't talk about new experiences. We actually create those new experiences, and that they'll take home with them.
So there's 4 days of a therapy you talk about, right?
Yes.
The first 4 days. What magical words can you say, or is there no magical words? Like,
I
don't want to give away all your secrets.
No,
or maybe it's not.
Listen, I would be very happy. I would be very happy if the next second and third generation of therapists would copy this. I really would
I know you're
like to
passionate
see
about
that
it.
happen.
I've heard you say you love to be out of a job because there's no more alienation
Right.
in the world.
The first day, and this is what breaks the ice, I ask the alienated parent to bring pictures, videos, memorabilia of cards that they exchanged with their child, anything that shows the relationship they had with their child prior to the onset of the alienation. And I walk them down memory lane. And these kids, they can't resist looking at pictures when they were born, when they were infants. I mean, nobody can resist looking at it. And it breaks the ice. I've had teenagers take the mouse out of the hand of the alienated parent and say, "Oh, I want to see this video, I want to see that video." And they really get into it. And that breaks the ice. Then on the first day, it's all positive.
The first day, they're not pissed off? Talk about all the bad things that the father did. And
I don't
reasons
allow
and
anything negative on the first day. I make it plain they will have the chance to speak, just not day one.
Okay.
Day one, we're going down memory lane. So I'll say, I need to meet this family too.
And how many hours is this
It could be 2 to 3 hours.
Okay.
And then I take the family to lunch, and then they have the afternoon activity where the parent is now supervisor, playmate, encourager. All kinds of activities, and it's so spontaneous that a child who will refuse to hug that parent in the morning, when they're in the trampoline and they're playing and bouncing off of each other, they have to hug each other. And it's so spontaneous and I'm taking pictures of the whole time.
Watching. They know the other parent's not there watching.
Well, I make it clear, first of all, everything is video, the sessions are video
why is that,
recorded.
Linda?
Number of reasons. And then I take pictures in the afternoon and I let the kids know that I'm sending the pictures back to their other parent, to their
that
lawyer.
That doesn't stop it? I would think that would make it, they would be afraid to, because before the therapy, they're always afraid to be videotaped and God forbid you could show that I had a good time.
Isn't it amazing when parents and adults use their authority to tell children, hey, I'm in charge here?
Wow, so they don't resist that, huh?
They usually don't. They usually don't. And
so what is the reason for the videotaping and the pictures then?
Well, there are lots of reasons. Number one, I want a record if I have to report back to court. Number two, the video recording captures body language and affect, things that you can't possibly convey in a report. And finally, if you're having a large group, and anyone can come in the extended family, anyone who had a relationship with the child.
So, because a lot of times, almost all the time, parents, grandparents, they're all out.
They
can come in on what? On what day? Day number one?
They come on day number one.
Wow.
Yes,
so you must
absolutely.
have a lot of crying, happy grandparents and siblings.
It is amazing. And so there's strength in numbers.
Right.
And so I can't be watching everybody. So I'm talking to one person, but the camera captures everybody. So it's a very accurate way of reporting back to the court.
And what's day two?
So day two, we play the video Welcome Back Pluto, which Richard Warshak developed, and that dramatizes real scenes that occur in alienation.
So you're actually just, because I know a lot of times people say, listen, if I'm coming back, I don't want to talk about it, don't bring up the past. You do bring up the past.
You have to. If a child believes that a parent abused them, especially sexually, and in most of these cases, the child has been told that their parent had abused them. In severe cases, it's almost 100% that you're dealing with some form of abuse. The child has to be disabused of that, because.
But then you're calling the other parent a liar.
We're very careful in correcting the record. The alienated parent is saying, no, I never did that. We don't get into how they got that information. The child may assume it, but we don't get into that. So we're careful about that. But if we don't correct that record, these children will grow up having the same PTSD as if they had been abused. So we have to correct the record. So after we watch Welcome Back Pluto, that's the time for discussion. There isn't a scene in that movie that an alienated parent can't relate to.
I watched the DVD. So it's almost like your story.
Yes.
Because it's unbelievable. What I think is unbelievable, I've read the book, your book, and Amy Baker's book, Breaking the Ties That Bind. It looked like my ex-wife read the book. It was like a textbook. It's so, everybody thinks that they're the only person that this happened. It's unbelievable, the similarities.
I wrote in my book,
shocking.
The sagas are all the same, only the names change.
It really is shocking. We only have 2 minutes left. Day number 3.
Day number 3 is an education on the ease of implanting memories and the ease with which memories can be distorted. And I show interactive videos and the kids love it, because they all think they're going to beat the challenge, and of course they mix up what they just saw 10 minutes earlier. So I show the research by Elizabeth Loftus and how eyewitness reports of crimes are inaccurate. And then I showed some very important research I discovered by a researcher at Harvard, Julia Schur, who did a study of college attendees. And she found that she could implant a memory that they had committed a crime.
That's scary.
Yes, in the third week of interviewing.
How scary is that?
Yeah, it is scary. Of course, the crime was something believable. They had a fight with their best friend, but 75%
in 3 weeks.
Yes,
and that's not apparent.
Yes, 75% of the participants bought into it and had a long, elaborate story about what happened.
Which we know, you can talk about false confessions, the
right.
whole, how people get like, how can you do that? Well, if you're being brainwashed for
right.
3
it's
hours,
very easy.
it's very easy. It's easy to do. Day number 4.
Day number 4, we now have to talk about a summary. Where they started on day number 1, where they are now, what life is going to be like. They're going home with their formerly alienated parent. And we talk about, of course, when am I going to see my other parent again? And we talk about everybody has to be in therapy. Everybody has to be working on this. You have to have a normal relationship with your rejected parent. So that's a motivating factor.
Right.
And your other parent.
They're not mad at you? That you're keeping them from that other parent?
Very often by day 4, I feel like grandma.
Okay.
I really do. So, no, by day 4, they've begun to see the
Now, are
light.
you getting calls from the alienating parent saying, when is this going to stop? Or
I get a lot of resistance.
That's a big,
I get tremendous resistance.
That's a big change. You're going from controlling these kids to now you don't have any, there's zero contact for 90 days.
I get a lot of resistance.
No text messages, right?
Right.
Nothing, no Facebook.
That's right.
That's the rules.
We have to totally delete the loyalty conflict.
And I guess you explain this to the child, why they're doing this, right?
Yes, with age appropriateness.
Right, of course.
And then they have to go into family therapy with a local family therapist who I collaborate with.
Because many times they're from out of state.
They go back to
just doing the first 4 days is with you,
right,
and then if they're lucky enough to live on Long Island, I guess they could see you, or you don't do that either? You'd still refer them out?
Well, I just moved back to Long Island, so I don't know. I haven't thought about that. I really don't have time to do the weekly therapy, so I probably won't be doing that, but I would coordinate with a local therapist. And so, because, the 4 days just jump starts the reconnection. There are a lot of issues. I mean, if a parent hasn't seen a child in 2 and 3 and 4 years, they don't know that child anymore. I mean, that's a lifetime in a childhood.
So much happens in kids. I've missed so many things.
So they have to get to know each other again.
Linda, thank you very much for coming in. This is so important. And imagine you have a program that has somewhere between 95 and 100% success rate. And what do we have to lose? You lose some money. And I know this is not a cheap program because it's very intensive, but I can guarantee you it's cheaper than a lawyer. It's cheaper than the lifetime of therapy. It's cheaper, way cheaper than putting this kid in jail, where a lot of these people ended up. We all know over 80% of men in jail or fatherless homes, rape victims, raising children. So you can't put a price tag on
and
this.
I can tell you, none of the alienated parents who came through TPFF regretted the investment, which was very reasonable for the follow-up work I do.
So if you want more information, go to the website and Google Linda Gottlieb, Turning Points for Families, TPFF, Turning Points for Families. You have the information on the bottom of the screen. But fight for this in court is my advice, and fight for it hard at the beginning. Don't let the time go by. It gets harder and harder and harder the more time goes by. Push for it and throw everything you've got, every penny, get the best lawyer and fight at the beginning. I'm Gary Jacobs. Thank you for joining us, Long Island Backstory. Please go to YouTube, like our page so you get notified of other stories of people like Linda Gottlieb.
Gary Jacobs and Long Island Backstory, winner of the Huntington Lodge No. 124's 2018 Community Service Award in recognition of the efforts to offer an alternative access to news stories of interest to all Long Islanders. Long Island Backstory is made possible in part by Americans for Legal Reform, the oldest, most successful legal group in the world. P.O. Box 2679, Huntington Station, New York 11746. Telephone 631-421-6390. Website Americans4legalreform.com.
I tried Oxy at a couple of parties. I didn't know it'd be this addictive. I didn't know how far I'd go to get more.
Opioid dependence can happen after just 5 days. Know the truth, spread the truth.
I don't remember how it started. Our back and forth. Victory. Fumble. Repeat. It always came back.
Dad!
Okay, here we go, throw it!
Yeah.
You probably don't remember what you told me,
That was perfect.
but I heard every word.
Nice.